farther along, I know all about it. Farther along, understand why. So cheer up, my brothers, live in the sunshine. We'll understand this all by and by. Tempted and tried, I wonder why the good man dies, bad man thrives, and Jesus cries 'cause he loves them both. We're all castaways in need of rope, hanging on by the last threads of our hope. In a house, a mirror full of smoke, confusion, illusions I've seen. But where did I go wrong? I sang along to every chorus of the song that the devil wrote like a piper at the gate, leading my men down to their fate. Some will courageously escape the seductive voice with the heart of faith, while walking the line back home. There's so much more to life than we've been told. It's full of beauty that will unfold and shine like you struck gold, my wayward son. The dead weight burden weighs a ton. I'll go down to the river and let it run, wash away all the things you've done. Forgiveness, alright. Farther along, know all about it. Farther along, understand why. So cheer up, my brothers, live in the sunshine. We'll understand this all by and by. Oh yeah. La 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 la. But still I get hard pressed on every side, between the rock and the compromise, like truth and a pack of lies fighting for my soul. I got no place left to go, 'cause I got changed by what I've been shown. It's more glory than the world has known, keeps me rambling on and skipping like a calf loosed from his stall. I'm free to love once and for all, and even when I fall, I get back up for the joy that overflows my cup. Heaven filled me with more than enough, broke down my levees and my bluffs, let the flood wash me. And one day when the sky rolls back on us, some rejoice and the others fuss, 'cause every knee must bow and tongue confess the Son of God, he's forever blessed. His is the kingdom and we're the guests. So put your voice up to the test, sing Lord come soon. Oh yeah. Farther along, know all about it. Farther along, understand why. So cheer up, my brothers, live in the sunshine. We'll understand this all by and by.
Everlasting one, nothing else compares to knowing you, to knowing you. You're the living God, and my soul it longs to and your love is like a flowing stream. And whenever I'm feeling dry, come to the river, come to the river.
All right, good morning and welcome to St. Mark's Church. Whether you're watching online or if you're with us in the house, we're just happy you're here with us today. Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of Thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for Thee. Take my voice and let me sing, always only for my King. Take my lips and let them be filled with messages from Thee. Take my silver and my gold, not a mite I would withhold. Take my intellect and use every power as You would choose. Here am I, all of me. Take my life, it's all for Thee. Take my will and make it Thine. It shall be no longer mine. Take my heart, it is Thine own. It shall be Thy royal throne. Take my love, my Lord, I pour at Your feet, its treasure store. Take myself and I will be ever only all for Thee. Take myself and I will be ever only all for Thee. Here am I, all of me. Take my life, it's all for Thee. Here am I, all of me. Take my life, it's all for Thee. Lift this up. Here am I, all of me. Take my life, it's all for Thee. Here am I, all of me. Take my life, it's all for Thee. Let's sing that one more time. And here am I, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. For you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every life. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. For you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Yeah. 'Cause you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. Sing, that is who you are. 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 Waymaker, miracle worker, waymaker, miracle worker. Yeah. Everybody sing, even when we don't see it, even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop. Lift it up, church. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop, no. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. Oh, 'cause you are the waymaker, miracle worker. my God, that is who you are. Father, we just thank you that no matter what darkness we're going through, that you're always the light to guide us. That no matter how plans change or when we're left just brokenhearted, Lord, you're still working all things for good. So, Father, we just want to thank you this morning for just being who you are. Amen. And y'all can have a seat. Thank you.
Whether you're here in person or watching online, welcome to SMC. We're glad you joined us. If you're new, please visit smc.church and click the I'm New button. We'd love to get to know you. If you'd like to give to SMC and our mission of making Jesus famous by becoming more like him, text SMC Give to 77977 or give online at smc.church/give. When parents have their children dedicated or baptized, presenting themselves and their child to God, they also receive the support of the SMC community. Our next child dedication will be shown during the service on Sunday, March 14th, but will be recorded prior to that date. If you're interested in dedicating your child or having your child baptized, sign up online at smc.church/dedications or contact Molly Vaughn. Connect is our 4-part series where we go deeper in connecting to God, purpose, family, and freedom. Connect is also the starting point for joining the SMC faith community as a member. The next cycle of Connect class begins Sunday, March 7th at 9 a.m. in the Guilford Room, formerly known as the Parlor. Sign up online today or find out more about Connect at smc.church/connect. James, the half-brother of Jesus, wrote, "My dear friends, if you know people who have wandered away from God's truth, don't write them off. Go after them. Get them back, and you will have rescued precious lives from destruction and prevented an epidemic of wandering away from God." We invite you to join us either in person or online next Sunday, March 7th, as we begin our Easter preaching series. All of us have had moments when we wanted to say something about our faith or invite a friend or acquaintance to church, and we shrink back and often don't say anything. Who knows how many of those openings slip through our fingers? These conversations happen in almost every arena of our daily life, and each time provides us with a chance to say a good word for Jesus. Nobody knows how many times God has anointed those conversations to open the floodgate to the Easter miracle. Join Bob and our elders as we spend the coming weeks to renew our devotion to keeping our eyes and hearts wide open when the time is right to start a meaningful conversation. Bob is going to teach us how the moments can happen naturally and without fear of rejection or stepping in over our heads. The Spirit of God is ready to use this series to prepare SMC for an Easter to be remembered. Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth." See you next week as we kick off this series, Out of the Salt Shaker, Becoming a Contagious Church. For those of you who want to go deeper into this series, Bob and Joanne Soliday will be hosting a Sunday evening discussion starting next Sunday, March 7th. The discussion will be held in person in the Worship Center from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. You can also engage by watching and chatting from home through our website, smc.church. This will be a discussion you do not want to miss.
What a moment you have brought me to, such a freedom I have found in you. You're the healer who makes all things new. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not going back, I'm moving ahead. I'm here to declare to you, my past is over in you. All things are made new. Surrendered my life to Christ. I'm moving forward. You have risen with all power in your hands. You have given me a second chance. Hallelujah, hallelujah, yeah, 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 yeah. I'm not going back, I'm moving ahead. I'm here to declare to you, my past is over in you. All things are made new. Surrendered my life to Christ. I'm moving, I'm not going back. I'm moving ahead. I'm here to declare to you, oh, my past is over in you. All things are made new. Surrendered my life to Christ. I'm moving forward. I said I'm moving forward, yeah. 'Cause you make all things new, yes, you make all things new, and I will follow you forward. Yes, you make all things new. Yes, you're making everything new. And I'll follow you forward, yeah. 'Cause I'm not going back, I'm moving ahead. Here to declare to you, my past is over in you. Things are made new. Surrender my life to Christ. I'm moving forward.
Good morning, everybody. That song is new to me, and I really like it. And it was so well done by both those gentlemen. Well, I could say a lot about those two guys, but wow, they're good. I can appreciate that. So guess what? At the early service this morning, we might have had about as many people as we can legally put in here, you know, with the boundaries and all of that sort of thing. So just for the fun of it, and so just do your arms like this if you have had the vaccines. Do your hands high. Yeah, I mean, the place was just busting with people this morning that have had the vaccines, and so I guess some people are saying, hey, it's, you know, maybe it's time for us to get up off the couch on Sunday mornings and do the real thing. But anyway, you're welcome here, and those of you who are watching us online. So are y'all into popsicles or anything like that? This is a banana. Banana popsicles are really good, by the way. Am I the only one in here? Are y'all, can y'all hear me? Because y'all just sitting there like, I feel like I'm talking to myself. It's not good to make a preacher feel like he's talking to himself. Look, hey, let me tell you, I had two experiences last Saturday. One, never had this in my lifetime, and the other, I had not done in more than 20 years. First thing is, I attended an Elon football game in February. Absolutely unheard of. Truthfully, I don't think I've ever seen a football game in mid-February. The other thing I did last Saturday is that I had not done this in almost 21 years, is I watched an Elon football game sitting in the stands instead of on the sidelines, sitting in the stands with my wife. Now, that's not a statement about Susan, but for the past 21 years, I've been on the sidelines for Elon football, and quite frankly, Susan likes it like that. But because we're in this COVID restriction era of life, not only has the 2020 football season for this particular level of college football, they canceled last fall, shifted over to the spring of 21. And right now, only players, coaches, and medical personnel are allowed on the sidelines. Turned out to be a great day. It was for a football game, especially now that the good guys won. But I just got to tell you, it wasn't the same. I never felt like that I was really a part of the game. I'm a team pastor over there, so Susan gets tickets for free, so it didn't cost me anything to go to the game, but it just wasn't the same. Now, there were some obvious positives to sitting in the stands, not to mention spending a nice, cool February afternoon with my wife. But she also reminded me partway through the game that she said, something else about sitting up here, Bob, is there is absolutely no chance that you're going to have a collision on the sidelines and wind up in a wheelchair, which happened once. Now, busted ribs, not the wheelchair, but I did have an unfortunate collision with a pretty good-sized dude. Now, talking about Susan, to try to get her to enjoy a football game in mid-February when it's really cold, well, that was one thing. But the good news is she knows quite a few of the players herself, and I was actually impressed with how she concentrated on the game. And I thought, that's pretty cool. I was not allowed in the locker room, though, so I couldn't go in the locker room before the game. And, in pregame stuff, you get to feel the emotions from the players and the coaches, and missed all the locker room speeches, which sometimes are pretty good. We happened to win. It was a good day for Elon. So, I wasn't in there for the post-game victory celebrations. It was just awkward. Just never felt like I was really in the game. One of the kids that I know pretty well got injured. It's a pretty significant injury. Now, ordinarily, I'd have been, besides the medical people, I'd have been the second guy over there to encourage him. Missed out on that. I'm the person who kind of gives the fist bump for the kid who comes off after making a great play. If somebody makes a costly mistake, maybe commits a turnover or something, I'm usually the guy that's over there to say, hey, hang in there. And our quarterback was starting his very first college football game, and he actually played very, very well. I would have been one of those guys to congratulate him at the end of the game, and instead I had to send him a text, and it just wasn't the same. It's hard to be all in when you're 15 rows up in the stands. In the words of Wilbur Reese in his book called $3 Worth of God, look at what he writes. He says, I'd like to buy $3 worth of God, please. Not enough to explode my soul or disturb my sleep, just enough to equal a cup of warm milk or a nap on a cold, rainy afternoon. I don't want enough of God to make me love people from the other side of the tracks. I don't want enough of God to be persuaded to give more generously or to sign up to volunteer. I don't want to be transformed or anything. I just want a little happiness added to my life. I want a pound of God in a paper sack. I'd like to buy $3 worth of God, please. Now, I would never suggest that any of you just settle for seats up in the grandstands, even if the seats are free. I'm telling you, the game is better close up. And so is life with Jesus. $3 of God just won't do it. Nah. So let's talk about that, but we should pray first. So God, we come before you now, and we would open up your word. It's not that complicated, God, what we're talking about today. But keep us focused so that we don't lose a sense of your Spirit moving among us. God, settle here in the ways in which you promised for the sake of Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen. Let me show you one of my favorite pictures. I get a chance to see it every day because it sits in a prominent place in our home. And this image, it really captures what I'm going to talk about today. Those are the hands of 4 of my most favorite women in the whole world. Now, this has been several years ago, so that'll make sense to you. But this is the hand of my granddaughter, Mary Marshall, who is now, she'll be 9 in a few weeks. This is my daughter, Mackenzie. This is her hand. This is Susan's hand. And this is my mother-in-law, who's now been gone for about 8 years or so. 4 generations. You know, you can tell a lot about hands, can't you? Tell a lot about people as we get a little bit older. Some of y'all remember the first time you looked at your hands and said, holy cow, these look like my parents' hands. Y'all remember that? The fact is that what happens to hands over the years eventually happens to everything in the world. Everything starts to decline. Now, in the world of science, it's called entropy. That simply means that anything in this universe, if you just kind of leave it alone, if you don't pay attention, if you just abandon it, it's going to start to move south. It's going to go in the direction of disorder, and eventually there's going to be some chaos. It's going to show some signs of age and weakness. The fact is, if you allow your life to go unattended, you're going to go the same way. Nobody drifts upstream. You're going to drift south, and you're going to move a little further all the time away from the plans and the purposes and the priorities of God for your life. Entropy means that everything that you can see in the universe is winding down and wearing out and moving closer and closer to disorder instead of order. Life just moves in that direction. Does it on its own. You don't have to coach it or anything else. Let me give you some examples of entropy. Proverbs chapter 24, look at this. I once walked by a field and the vineyard of a lazy fool. Thorns and weeds were everywhere and the stone wall had fallen down. When I saw this, it taught me a lesson. Sleep a little, doze a little, fold your hands and twiddle your thumbs, then poverty will pounce on you like a bandit. Scarcity will attack you like an armed robber. Now that was Solomon's way. About 3,000 years ago, Solomon wrote that, and he was describing entropy. A long time before anybody ever thought of that word, and I'm pretty sure Solomon never had to suffer through a physics class, or entropy, which is a part of the second law of thermodynamics. Vineyards are headed to catastrophe when you don't pay attention to them. And here's what can happen, though. Look at this. Here's what happens when a winemaker pays attention and takes good care of the vineyard. This is a guy who's not been sitting on the sidelines of life. He's not been sitting in the grandstands, but he's in the game. Left unattended, everything diminishes. Like an old building, here's a house that's just dilapidated. Cars will wind up in the junkyard, and even locker rooms can become chaotic when they're not taken care of. There's always some decline. Now, in a practical way, entropy is kind of like what happens when a light bulb burns out. Everything is headed in that direction. Our clothes wear out, cars rust out. If you've ever had if you have one of those little spin tops, where you spin it on the table, eventually it's going to start to wind down and lose its energy. A popsicle, left unattended, most likely is going to melt. Sooner or later, guess what? It's going to happen to us. It's the way life works. Now, if you're still not convinced about entropy, here's what you can do. Go home after this service, dig out your old high school yearbook, and then go look at yourself in the mirror, and this is what it looks like. You see that disintegration, don't you? I mean, it's very noticeable. Or as they say, it's just a matter of time. That's exactly right. So when we become apathetic, careless, indifferent, or complacent, pretty much in any area of life, entropy sets in. Dreams die, hopes fade, and we look out in the future and it's anybody's guess. And then we learn that, everything seemed pretty good yesterday, but that doesn't automatically mean that everything's going to be okay tomorrow. Choose anything in your life that's important, put it on autopilot, and you are risking the deterioration of this thing called entropy. It will eventually wreck everything, creates disorder and confusion, even in churches. For example, you show me a church that's focused and energized. The mission and the vision are clear. The church dreams about things together. They're headed in the right direction, and they are changing their world of influence. No question about it. But over time, if a church doesn't stay focused, certain dangerous things can happen. Entropy begins to set in. Focus begins to get a little fuzzy. The church starts to say, well, what exactly is God calling us to do as a church? And then if there's no clarity about that, then all kind of superficial things begin to rise to the surface that don't matter. It's like a church says, hey, look, we don't really want to overdo, so just give us $3 worth of God. That's going to do. So let's talk about the darker side of what happens if our passions go to the low road. Let me illustrate it like this. Suppose you go home this afternoon, you turn on the news, and you hear about a destructive earthquake that struck Southern California this morning, and you're going to feel a twinge, and you're going to say, oh, come on, man, not again. And so your heart momentarily starts to go out to those people who live in Southern Cal because now they're displaced or the power's off and, all kinds of things like that. But then, you know how we are. In a matter of 2 or 3 minutes, we can turn our attention to more pressing things like our favorite team might be playing on television this afternoon, or could be we just need a much needed Sunday afternoon nap. But let's say that your daughter lives in Southern California. Now it's a whole new game, isn't it? The phone lines are down, you're frantic, you can't get through, no cell phone service. Now then, watching a game on Sunday afternoon or taking a Sunday nap becomes totally irrelevant. You're frantic, you call your friends, everybody gathers over at your house, the church is praying, they're wondering, wanting to know, needing to know what's up with your daughter. What might be a 5-minute footnote in the evening news that you wouldn't have paid attention to last week has suddenly started to consume your life because you have a relationship that's hanging in the balance. Sometimes I wonder if in the original plan of God, I'm talking about all the way back to the days of creation before sin began to enter the picture and sabotage our hearts and all the rest. I wonder if our hearts were created to care about everything and everybody on a much deeper level, and then sin got in the mix, and then everything kind of broke inside here. Maybe it happened to you when you got your first job, and after you were there for a while, you thought, well, some of the men and women in this company don't have exactly the kind of integrity and character that I was hoping for. Maybe you've been married for 32 years, but perhaps your trust just started to implode because you discovered that there was a hidden addiction or some self-destructive choices, and now you're thinking, I don't know if I can ever trust that person again. What if in your teenage years, one of your parents just bailed out on the family, just walked out, and now you're thinking, is that the way all parents are? We all know what it's like to be betrayed and lied to and deceived and had our trust broken. Sometimes what we do to protect ourselves is we build walls around our hearts, and then we become very selective about the people that we decide to trust. But listen up, friends. When your heart gets broken and your trust is shattered, here's what your heart's going to do if it's left alone, if entropy begins to take over. Your heart will start to develop protective edges. I call them calluses. It's like you're saying to the people around you, you aren't going to hurt me again. I'm not going to let you do this. And if we could hook you up to some type of emotional heart monitor, it'd be like that, flat line. Nothing. You don't feel anything anymore. Your heart's bound up, starts to affect every area of your life, and it will eventually begin to poison every relationship. Let me give you a couple of examples. You know what it's like to be watching TV at night maybe, and one of the networks shows a 60-second little video about poverty or malnutrition disease somewhere in the world, and if your heart is a little bit out of whack, you'll either just turn the channel or get up and go get some more chips, or for those of you who are, you'll reach for the remote and click, just put the whole story on mute. Our hearts, every time we do that, our heart gets just a little bit harder. It's this thing called entropy. Here's another example. Our staff and volunteers do a fabulous job when it comes to putting together these creative videos. When we start talking about making announcements here, every church has to make announcements. You have to let people know what's coming up. Announcements are they're not the most exciting part of a service. I get that. But our folks here, they make those announcements so inviting, so compelling. But the truth is that some of y'all check out, don't you, mentally? Or if you're at home, you reach for the remote, it's like click it on mute until the announcements are over. And that's because something's messed up in here, and you don't even want the person on the big screen to talk you into getting in the game. So sometimes we change the channel, other times we just change the channel right here in our minds. Listen, and I'm trying to raise your sensitivity here. There are more Christ followers in the world today who are victims of persecution and oppression. I'm talking right now, this very minute, than at any other time in the past 2,000 years. So then how can we just shrug our shoulders when we read those kind of reports? Something that would be a little more close to home. Religious discrimination is on the rise everywhere around the world, including across our land, where Christian values and beliefs are under constant scrutiny and attack. And so somebody help me understand, how then can the American church just kind of lean back and sit around and be living in la-la land of denial? Jesus is marginalized in this country right now more than at any other time in my life. And yet there are tens of thousands of Jesus followers in this city who don't give a rip that Jesus is being shoved to the edge. Now, it could mean that we're hopelessly naive. I get that. Or worse, it might mean that something's happening in here, that apathy and indifference are taking over and winning the battle. So what do we say? Just give me $3 of God. I don't want to go deep or anything. Just $3. That'll be enough. I know people who have become so cynical and so sarcastic about life that quite frankly, their whole heart's been shut off and they don't care much about anything. Basically, their heart has stopped working and their compassion has gone MIA. It's missing in action, or AWOL. I hate it when that happens to me. Do you? The Bible teaches that we were handmade in the image of God. Now you think about that. Look at the person sitting beside you. That person is an image bearer of God. They might not look like it today, but it's true. So what does that mean? That's a great question. What does that mean? I'll show you. Just 6 chapters. Only 6 chapters into the Bible, we can see that God is already having a reaction to the direction things were going on planet Earth. Things were already beginning to disintegrate. The whole thing is melting down faster than this popsicle, and it gives God reason to pause. And God takes a close-up look, and he says, I gave these people freedom, and they're about to mess up the whole thing. Look at this, Genesis 6. The Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth, and he saw that everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. So the Lord God was sorry that he ever made them and put them on the earth. It broke his heart. Now, I'm just going to tell you, I don't want to be known as the person who broke the heart of God. But at the same time, I'm encouraged by that short passage, because what it means is that God didn't just spin this universe into existence and then take a vacation. He's deeply involved. He's not sitting up in the grandstands. He's on the sidelines in the game. Probably a whole lot more than those Genesis 6 people ever knew. So do you ever wonder? Do you ever pick up the newspaper, turn on the news, and wonder what's going on in God's heart today? Then we get to the New Testament, and we start reading about the stories of Jesus, and he gives us this compelling image of what God is really like. You look at Jesus and say, that's God. That's exactly what God is like. Let me show you. Some of you are going to know this story. But Jesus, one day he's at the church and the synagogue, and he encounters a man who's got a paralyzed hand and arm. Now, it could be the man had a stroke. It might have been a birth deficiency. Maybe he had an accident in his life or whatever. But Jesus, he sees the man in the church, and he's just like that. Jesus, his compassion is stirred up. Jesus went into the synagogue. This is Mark chapter 3. He went into the synagogue again and noticed a man with a deformed hand. Since it was the Sabbath, Jesus' enemies, by the way, the enemies of Jesus were us, the church, the religious people. So Jesus' enemies watched him closely. If he healed the man's hand, they planned to accuse him of working on the Sabbath. Now, let me start by saying, notice where this story took place. In the church. Actually, it was in the Jewish synagogue. It was on the Jewish Sabbath, which was Saturday. And you're probably thinking, well, what better place in the whole world for there to be a demonstration, a miraculous demonstration of compassion? The problem is that these Jewish religious leaders said one of their rules about the Sabbath is you can't practice medicine, you can't, because that was work, and you can't work on the Sabbath. Am I the only one here? Every time I study that passage, I've wondered if maybe the people who hated Jesus, the church people, do you suppose that, does anybody in here wonder sometimes, did they plant the guy in the church? Because they knew Jesus was a sucker for broken, hurting people. And so they were just poised to, as soon as he breaks the rules, they're going to jump on him. Well, anyway, so they get in Jesus' face. I imagine Jesus rolled his eyes and they said, you can't heal somebody on the Sabbath. Jesus said, what do you mean I can't? Watch this. Jesus said to the man with the deformed hand, come and stand in front of everybody. I like that because, Jesus could have taken the guy backstage and done one of those secret healings. And so don't tell anybody. No, he just says right here in front of everybody, in front of the religious people and the whole bunch. Then he turned to the critics and asked, does the law permit good deeds or on the Sabbath, or is it a day for doing evil? Is this a day to save a life or destroy it? But they would not answer him. That's because the question was hard. And the question was going to expose him. I love the way Jesus is able to totally disarm this crowd of onlookers and do-gooders. These religious men, all they wanted to do was sabotage the plans of God. They wanted to institute their own agenda, hijack the potential of what God eventually wanted to do in this world. And look, it says Jesus was angry as he looked around at the people. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not crazy about the possibility of making Jesus angry. I don't want him to be angry with me. But that's not the half of the story. That word angry, it does not mean like a sudden outburst, as if maybe like a road rage or anything. The word means that Jesus is frustrated way down in his spirit. There is passion, even though he's exasperated. Don't miss this. He, that is Jesus, felt sorry for them, the religious people, because they were so stubborn. Now I'm going to tell you something. I have reactions to stubborn people, but I don't usually feel sorry for them. Y'all with me on that? That short phrase, felt sorry, can actually be translated with the word grieved. The point is that when Jesus saw their reaction to this broken man, he was grieved. Why can't these people get it? Jesus wondered. But once again, our English language doesn't do justice to this world. Notice that Jesus felt sorry for them because they were stubborn. That word in the original language is porosis, stubborn blindness. It means that Jesus felt something way down deep in his spirit. Now, in our day, when we say something like that, we'll say, well, it stirred my heart was moved, or it broke my heart. But in their language, it was way different. It goes way down in here. It would be like us saying, my stomach was in knots, or I felt sick to my stomach. That's what was going on in Jesus. What that means is, when Jesus was stirred with passion and compassion and emotion, in order to demonstrate the intensity of his passion, I need to fast forward just a little bit so you can see how deep this is. I want to fast forward. I'm going to take you to a well-known passage that most people have heard right near the end of Jesus' life. We're going to go to Luke chapter 23. Jesus has been arrested. He's been charged with a crime that he did not commit. They take him through a series of bogus trials. They bring in a bunch of corrupt and deceitful witnesses. He's found guilty of showing contempt for God, which was called blasphemy. That was the official accusation. Some of the Roman leaders weren't frightened of Jesus, but they were concerned that maybe he had the potential of becoming a destabilizing troublemaker, and maybe someday he was going to lead an all-out, full, rebellious insurrection. Well, Jesus is reluctantly sentenced to be crucified by the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. Pilate really didn't want to go that far with it, but then, the last thing the governor needed was for word to get back to Rome, and the emperor in those days was Tiberius. If Tiberius hears that Pilate's not able to keep the peace, then there's going to be a real problem. So these final hours of Jesus' life, we start to get a clear picture of the character of God. This is what God is like. This God on the cross. So I want to read some selected verses and help you understand the riveting drama in this moment. Crucifixion was a common form of capital punishment in first century Rome. Today we would never do it because it's cruel and ruthless. But in those days, it was kind of a brutal culture, sort of a nasty culture. So the Roman government, they wanted to make sure that you understand, you break the rules, and we are going to initiate our force with brutal, bully-style intimidation. If you said something about compassion in the Roman Empire, it probably did not compute. Their system of justice was designed, we're going to make a strong statement, and they say, this is the price you pay. If you decide to defy us and rebel, this is the punishment. You resist, and we're gonna pound you to a cross, and you can hang there until you die, and then we're gonna take your lousy body over to the landfill and dump it. When the Romans were convinced that you had become some kind of disruptive threat, these reckless renegades were systematically eliminated very quickly. It was a steep price to pay, but the Romans wanted everybody to know, if you challenge our power and authority, this is what will happen to you. So Jesus has endured an unfair trial. Isn't it fascinating that evidently there was not one single witness who stood up in his defense? The man was totally innocent of the charges that had been leveled against him. But condemnation, they were going to condemn him no matter what. It was predictable. It was coming. And this is where I want to pick up the story. Remember that this is Friday morning. On Thursday night, the night before, Jesus had met with his disciples. They had a meal together, had dinner. It was the last time that they would do this. And then Scripture says that Jesus headed out to a quiet place to be alone. It was kind of a place of solitude, and he needed to pray and take care of some business. Well, late that Thursday night, some soldiers show up in this quiet place, and they arrest Jesus, and then throughout the night, doesn't get to sleep at all. Throughout the night, there are a series of phony trials. It's a total sham of justice. Jesus is physically and emotionally drained by morning. He's empty, he's exhausted, he's depleted. He also experienced a beating that would just speed up the dying process. By the way, physicians who have studied crucifixion in detail say that in all likelihood, after the beating, that Jesus was probably in a state of shock, the loss of blood, the dehydration, hadn't slept in 36 hours. So he's not able to manage the cross. Because the Romans wanted to make sure that everybody in the community could see their power up front, and they wanted crucifixion to be a deterrent to any other criminal action. Crucifixion was a public display. You didn't get executed by lethal injection behind a closed curtain or anything. So they would parade the prisoners through the city streets on the way toward execution. It was kind of like the Romans were saying, hey, mess with us. And this is where you wind up, Luke 23. As they led Jesus away, a man named Simon, who was from Cyrene, happened to be coming in from the countryside. The soldiers seized him and put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. It was obvious that because of all the physical exhaustion that Jesus was experiencing, he couldn't carry the thing. By the way, Cyrene is a coastal town in what is present-day Libya. That's North Africa. Isn't it interesting that it was an African who was randomly selected out of the crowd to carry the cross? Two others, both criminals, were led out to be executed with him. Once again, it was common in those days for there to be several convicts executed at the same time. That just added a little more drama and a little more fear to the process. So as far as the people in town knew, this guy Jesus was just another defiant rebel, and he was about to get what he deserved. He was going to pay the ultimate price for his crimes. When they came to the place of execution, they nailed him to the cross, and the criminals were also crucified, one on his right side and one on his left. Just another ordinary day in Jerusalem. Criminals were publicly executed all the time. Just another day of what happens if you buck the system. We will use our strong arm tactics, and with power and control, we will silence you. If you were in Jerusalem that day and you'd have had no idea who Jesus was, let's say you had a business on one of the streets where this parade was taking place, and maybe you looked out the window and you saw these prisoners carrying crosses down the street, and you probably said to yourself, oh, well, just another day. 3 bad guys, getting what they deserve. But for just a few minutes, can you reverse the role and put yourself in the place of Jesus and see if you can get in touch with his emotions in the moment? Jesus is in his late 20s. For the past several years, he has completely invested himself in this intense, emotionally draining public ministry. He traveled a lot, took no time for breaks and vacations, high maintenance people all the time pulling at him in a dozen directions, endless preaching responsibilities, conflicts and controversies with the religious leaders. He chose a small group of inexperienced men to tag along. Spent 3 intense years with these guys, preparing them for responsibility to take over the kingdom expansion vision in the future. This happened 24/7, 365 for several years. Traveled with these guys, coached them. They listened to his compelling sermons. They were eyewitnesses to his miracles. They had a front row seat to everything. Never up in the grandstands. They were on the sidelines of the deal. And Jesus then one day he's going to hand them complete responsibility to take hold of God's vision and change the world. The whole future would be built on the shoulders of those 12 men and what they were about to experience in the closing moments of Jesus' life. But one turned on him and sold him out. One disowned him. And with the exception of one, all the rest of these friends were nowhere. They were anywhere and everywhere except the one place where Jesus needed them to be. Can you imagine what that would have felt like? Total abandonment by everybody who loved you. Have you ever wondered why there wasn't just one person who had the courage to step into one of those trials and say, hey, look, I know that guy. He's not a bad man. I can vouch for him, but not one person stood up to defend him. Not one. Where were these hundreds of people who tagged along with him? Where were the dozens of people that he touched and healed and fixed their challenges? What about the thousands of people that he fed with bread and fish? I mean, what about those who gathered on the hillsides to cheer his sermons? Jesus totally invested his one and only life in thousands of people, sometimes preaching to thousands at a time. Nobody. Not one. Where was everybody? That's what makes the next word totally mind-boggling to me. Whenever I find my heart kind of all bound up and I find myself being indifferent in the world around me, this next word just stops me in my tracks and totally recalibrates my heart. I want you to capture this picture. He is completely deserted. The soldiers are mocking him. At least one of the criminals on one side is ridiculing him. His mother is an eyewitness to this nightmare, and her heart must have been shattering in 1,000 pieces. Not one friend in the world was willing to stand for him. Jesus is experiencing total abandonment. And then these words, Father, forgive these people. Are you kidding me? The word in Jesus' language, in the language that he spoke, the word was pater, Papa. Don't hold this against them. They don't understand what this means. Seriously? That prayer blows me away. Let me illustrate. I started in the ministry in June 1974. I was a student pastor. I've told you stories about that. Served 2 small churches. I was barely 22 years old. I'd only been a college graduate for about 4 weeks. Wasn't scheduled to start seminary until that September. Preached exactly 7 times, but you've heard me say I had one sermon preached at 7 different times in 7 different places. I never officiated at a wedding or a funeral. Never made a hospital visit. 0 leadership experience. What was I thinking? What were they thinking? I mean, they were probably thinking it because it was either going to be me or some other guy. And evidently somebody on that search committee said, well, let's go with the kid. Who knows? Maybe he'll grow up fast. I had no idea how fast. Fast forward 15 years, by that time I'd been the pastor of SMC for more than a decade, so let's just say that I had some significant relational equity around here. St. Mark's was a good church. It's always been a good church. It was a good church when I got here. But I started wondering about 10 years in, what would it take for us to kind of shift gears a little bit, to become a church that really loved and cared for the broken, the disappointed, the cynical, the skeptical, those who hold God at arm's length, or even those who hold God in contempt. How would we speak to people like that? In fact, we're going to start talking about that a lot next week. Would we have to make a few adjustments? What would we need to modify if we were going to do church in ways that this church had never done for generations? And let's just say that there was a small group of people who got angry, very angry. And believe me, it was a small group of people, but I'll tell you, when the minority is frustrated and vocal, it can be pretty unsettling. And the distractions at times become almost unbearable. It was especially difficult when the attacks got personal. And there were lies, innuendos, whispers, secret meetings happening around, and anonymous attacks on my integrity and character and that of the leadership of the church, and it was really difficult. It was really hard when my kids started coming home from school saying, hey, some kid from the church told them, why's your dad trying to wreck our church? Wonder where they'd heard that. But the straw that broke the camel's back was when my wife received an anonymous letter, and it was filled with some outrageous lies and absurd threats about what was about to happen to me if I did not quietly bow out of SMC. Now, by this time, I had gotten pretty used to the anonymous mail and, attacking me. But let me tell you something, everybody. When I walked into the kitchen that day and I saw her standing there and she had a letter in her hand like this and she was crying and she said, I can't do this anymore. And my heart was shattered and my spirit was on the verge of defeat. I had to make a visit down to Duke Hospital that afternoon and visit a church member who was there getting ready to have some surgery. And so I took that unsigned letter and I laid it on the passenger side of my car next to me. But all I could see was this image of Susan standing in the kitchen with tears and that letter. On my way back to Burlington, I was out on 85, and you probably know this place. I stopped. There's a little McDonald's right there in Hillsboro, so I pulled off and I pulled into the parking lot of McDonald's and I reread the letter and I started bawling and I just told God, you got the wrong guy. Never signed up for this. So before I drove back home, I stopped by a friend's office. He's a businessman here in this town, and I've respected him for a long time. I walked in, laid the letter on his desk. I was choking back tears, and I said, I'm done, man. I am done, and I'm not going to keep doing this. And I'm telling you, with monster tears in his eyes, he got up and came around his desk and stood behind me and put his hands on my shoulders, and he said, Bob, you can't quit. And I hadn't heard that word. I didn't tell him I was going to quit. I just told him I wasn't going to do this. But that word pierced me like a knife because I'm not a quitter by nature. A few years later, one of the people who had been such a pain in my caboose, this is a woman who had been so verbally abrasive in her attacks, and she was in hospice care. In the final season of her life, her daughter called me and she wanted to know She knew that we had a stressful relationship, but she wanted to know. She said, would you come and see Mom? At first I thought, no, I'll send another pastor. We got other people. But then I heard my friend's words. You can't quit. So I made the visit that night. I walked in the room over at the hospice house. She was struggling to breathe. So I didn't say anything. I just sat beside her. She didn't know I was there. Her eyes were closed. I sat there scrolling through memories. Probably 10 minutes later, her daughter walked in and she said, Mom, she said, Bob's here. Didn't you want to see him? And she kind of took a deep breath and she raised up a little bit in the bed. And you know what she said? She looked at me and she said, I'm sorry. And you know what I said? Me too. And I realized in that moment that there were two people in that room who desperately needed to be forgiven. Had she been a problem for me? You can't imagine. Had she been a vocal part of a group of people determined to hijack the future and the mission of SMC? No question. But we both had made mistakes. And I had allowed her anger and bitterness and the rumors that she spread to do something in my heart that I didn't like. And there was a part of my heart that was cold and indifferent. And I didn't like that kind of apathy in my life because I'm telling you, it wrecks me and shatters my relationships. And it will do the same thing to you. It's not good. A week later, I officiated at her funeral service next door in the sanctuary. There was standing room only. I think most of the people, I quite frankly think a lot of those people came to see what I was going to say about her. Do I still get frustrated? Sometimes, but not much anymore, because God used that season. It was a season to reboot. I needed my heart and my future to be recalibrated. My friends, spiritual apathy and indifference are killing the cause of Jesus in our day. There are tens of thousands of people, and they live within reach of our influence. And if we gave them a little card that said, are you a Christian? Yes or no? Most of them would check yes, but they are on the verge of quitting. They don't typically tell God, never. They just say, I'll get back to you. Maybe your last physical didn't turn out all that well, and the doctor said you need to lose some weight or maybe join the gym, and you don't say never, you just say later. Maybe you need to get your finances under control and restrain some of your spending. Have you ever wanted to maybe be able to give something with generosity, but you can't see a way to do that? It's not like you're not saying never, you're just saying, yeah, I'm going to call a financial advisor one of these days. Maybe your spiritual life is on empty. You need to get involved in a church or connect in a community group or a study group. You're not saying, I'm never going to do that. Maybe you're saying, when the kids are a little older and my job is not so demanding. Bob, I bet you when I get older, I'm going to have more time to devote myself to my relationship with God. It's not never. It's just when my life settles down. Hey, look, do you know when life is going to settle down? When you demand it and when you decide. It's up to you. It's not up to life. I'm going to be a more attentive spouse. I'm not going to miss my kids' games and recitals. I'm going to start attending a recovery program. I'm going to join the gym. I'm going to get out of debt. I'm going to pursue a relationship with Jesus. I'm going to start reading the Bible, get involved in a community group. But if it's all talk, nothing's going to change. Demand it and decide. Or else you can have $3 worth of God. The new preaching series that's going to start next week is going to focus on all of that and so much more. Try not to miss a single week, because we can help you. We can help you, and we will, no matter where you are in this journey. We can learn to say, I'm tired of sitting in the grandstands. I'm going to get in the game. I'm going to move to the sidelines and be ready if my name is called. Uh-oh. And you know what options we have? We can give this popsicle a pep talk. Come on, boy. Wake up. Or we can give this popsicle a little encouragement. No, you know the only thing that's going to stop this entropy, you know what's going to stop the freezing? A freezer. The melting, the freezer. Otherwise, it's going to be a worthless snack. Don't y'all hate to see a banana popsicle go to waste? Scientists call it entropy. We just call it $3 worth of God. There are 500 pieces in this jigsaw puzzle. My wife's all about jigsaw puzzles. So last night, and that's what it looks like when it's put together. Last night, I was standing in the kitchen, and I said, hey, Susan, how long do you think I'd have to shake this before this thing came together? She said, probably 100 years. How's a puzzle come together? Elbow grease, creativity. Hey, last year, I think it was last year, our grandson got into Legos, and he got seriously into it. That kid can spend hours. There he is. He just sit at a kitchen table, and he can spend hours assembling his next design. This is Walt. He goes to church here. He's 7 years old. He's all about it too. But they don't just sit there and look at the box. You see that Eiffel Tower right there? One of the young adult church members built that. He's a master Legos builder. You can walk through his house. There are amazing designs. And the kid right now, he's not a kid, but he's in his last year at dental school. So, if a guy can put together that, you might want to get him to work on your teeth one of these days. But that's for something else. But let me tell you, look at this. How am I doing? This is entropy right here. Is it coming together? What's going to have to happen? Somebody's got to be creative, have an imagination, and work at it, or else it's just not going to work. That's what's limiting the cause of Jesus in our day, because we say, later. But for now, Bob, just give me $3. That's all I need. Legendary coach Bear Bryant. Let me read this to you. Here's what he used to say to his teams a lot. He says, guys, gentlemen, in our game today, there are going to be 4 or 5 plays that will determine the outcome. Just 4 or 5 plays. And those plays are going to swing the momentum either toward us or away from us. I don't know which plays they're going to be. You guys don't know which plays they're going to be. All you can do is you go out there and you give all you have on every play. Now, if you happen to be giving all you've got on one of those crucial plays, and we catch our opponents giving less than their best, that play is going to swing things in our direction. If the bear were alive today, you know what he'd call it? Reboot. Reboot it and go in a new direction. But if you don't really care about the game, if you don't really care about how life turns out, then $3 worth of God will probably do you. But real life demands a decision and no turning back. I love you, SMC.
All I am and all I have to bring, I will give to you my everything. All I am and all I have to bring, I will give to you, and I will follow my heart's surrender. My Jesus, I am yours, and I will follow my life in your hands. My Jesus, I am yours, and I will follow my heart surrendered. My Jesus, I am yours, and I will follow my life in your hands. My Jesus, I am yours. Everything, all I am and all I have to bring, I will give to you my everything. All I am and all I have to bring, I will give to you everything. All I am and all I have to bring, I will give to you.
For thousands of years, you have been inviting people to follow you. And even through the Gospels, every single individual had to make a decision, had to make a choice. They had to make the choice on that very first invitation. But then even those that have followed you for decades, that decision comes every single day. So for some of those that are watching online or some that are in the house, maybe it's that first decision that needs to be made today. I just pray that your Spirit would give them the boldness to take that first step, even if they don't have all of their questions answered, but that they would accept your invitation to begin just to take one step with you and towards you. And for those of us who have been walking with Jesus for decades, today's Sunday. It's easy to do that in a church service and to say yes to you, but tomorrow's Monday. And we're going to have to make that decision again tomorrow morning. As I start my day, how close am I going to follow you? How close am I going to draw to you? And I pray even tomorrow and Tuesday and the next day after that, God, you would give us yet again just a fresh boldness from your Spirit to make the right decision and to follow you closely. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you guys. Hey, if you're watching online or you're in the house and you're like, hey, I'm ready to take a step towards Christ, or maybe you've been walking with Jesus a long time and maybe you've been experiencing some of the entropy that Bob taught us about today. I want to invite you, if you're in the house, stop by Next Steps. We believe everybody has a next step in their faith journey. And that is a place, if you're in the house, to stop by there and we can help get you connected to a group, maybe a study. We're starting a really good one actually next Sunday night. That's going to be right here in the worship center with Bob and Joanne, one of our elders. It's going to be a great time. So that might be the first step for you, or maybe it's joining our Connect class that starts back up next Sunday. We have our 4-week Connect class. For those of you that are watching online, all you have to do is go to the homepage of our website, smc.church. Click the button that says I'm new. And just fill that form out. We'll be in touch with you this week within a couple of days, and we'll help answer your questions, help you get connected, and take another step towards Christ. But hey, man, it's so good to see you guys here this morning. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Your love is like a waterfall, and your love to the river of life. And as the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs after you. Oh, as the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs after you. Oh, as the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs after you. Oh, as the deer pants for the waters, so my soul longs after you.
Every day I'm falling short, and every day I fall apart, undeserving of the love shown by the Father's heart. I'm a ship without a sail, and my